Excellent. Here we go. Well, welcome everybody to another part of the BHARCS season, which is going good guns. And the feedback, thank you to everybody who takes the time to kind of put comments and send messages and send feedback from the series, because it's good. We want to know that people are enjoying it and people are enjoying the content and also thinking about a lot of things. I had somebody who contacted me only last week about how, thanks to your presentations, they are really starting to visualize it now, and they're starting to sit and feel it. I think that's the key, and I think that's what it's about. The more we think about the way that you've all been presenting, this isn't about thinking about things differently. Actually, it's about feeling things differently, and I think that's the power of it. So yeah, say hi when you come in. Let us know where you are. Hello, Jennifer. Hello, Helen. Good to see you. And that's been also interesting as well, just seeing how widespread the audience has been, actually. And I think it supports the fact that BHARCS is also a truly international platform. I think that's really important that we recognise that, and what Sindor's managed to build there is really quite amazing. So hi, Zoe, good to see you. So today then, we've got the wonderful Eva. Eva, it's your turn today, redefining walks.
Yeah.
Today, looking at the walk side of things. And this is a really interesting thing, because I think when we think about walking your dog, there's just been so many kind of unquestioned norms about walking, and also perceived areas where some of the challenges of walking come from. And I think it's a pretty frustrating thing for us all, actually, when we see about some of these things, because it can be really frustrating for the general public, I think, when they're being told, yeah, well, it's a training thing, walking, and getting your dog to walk nice on the lead and whatever it is. And then, but not knowing why the dog might be, that's all great when I'm in the village hall doing some training or in the back garden, but why I can't do it right now. So I think that's something we can really explore today. Hi, everybody. Hi, Kim. Hi, Winky. Hi. Great. So over to you then, Eva. Let's dive in.
Yeah, thank you, Andy, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. So today I will be talking about how me and my dog Balt went from walks being a complete nightmare for both of us to something that we really enjoy. So I will be sharing a presentation with you. And just tell me if you can see it. Yes, okay, thank you.
Good, looking good.
So this is Balt's story. And before we dive into walks, I just want to share a bit about him, because I think it's every guardian's dream to talk about their dog. So Balt is now approximately 8 years old. I adopted him 4 years ago, and that was, I think, like a month or two before I joined Canine Essentials 101. He was adopted from Spain, and for everyone that doesn't know about the situation of hunting dogs in Spain, they are not protected by any law. So they are being abused, abandoned, killed without any repercussions, really. So when Balt came to me, he was completely shut down. I did not know that at that point, because I've never seen a shut down dog before. He looked like he was okay in any situation you put him in, but when you looked at him, there was just like this emptiness behind his eyes. And that was something very new to me, because with both my two my previous dogs, when you met them, you could write instantly you got a sense of who they are, what they like, what they don't like. But with Balde, there was just nothing. So it was really hard to connect with him. But the saddest part, I think, is that it looked like he was this like stereotype of a good dog because he was okay with any situation you put him through. And that's why I put together a little video of who Balt is now. So I will share it with you. So he is a very loving, gentle, goofy guy. But it took us some time to get where we are today. So yeah, I just thought I will share this little clip with you to get a sense of who are we talking about today. So regarding the walks, so walks were not the only thing we struggled with, but we are talking about this today. So first, when I adopted him, I did with him as I did with my two previous dogs, which is took him out in our neighborhood to walk. And he just refused to walk at all. He would not move. And I started to learn through BHARCS that like environment, like all the noises, the sights, the smells, it can become like too much for a dog. So that's why we started to walk in more calm places. That was usually woods. He was not sniffing, he was not slowing down, he was not exploring. But because some time has passed and the environment that we walked in was now calmer, he started to decompress and his true emotional state came through. And then I saw like how bad in how bad of state he was in. And like from an outsider's point of view, it would look like he was getting worse because he was starting to show like dog reactivity, frenzied running, lunging at people, like mainly men, vehicles. But in fact, like he was getting better because being shut down is the worst shape an individual can be in. So that was very interesting because it was pointed out to me like your dog is getting worse. And if I would not have joined BHARCS, I would also think that, right? So yeah, we really struggled. The main problem for me was the frenzied running because he was running from one end of the leash to the other, and it was very painful for me and for him. It was also very scary because I did not like I worried that the leash will slip out of my hands or something like that. And I also have a type of arthritis that is located mainly in my hips. So when the inflammation is bad, it is very hard for me to move. And having a dog who is running frenziedly was very, very scary for me. So the walks became something I dreaded. And what we could do at that point is stop walks altogether. But I felt that for Bald, that was not the best solution because he had this need to move all the time. So I felt that if I would take that away from him completely, it would make things even worse. So that's why I tried to provide that need for movement in a way that did not contribute to raising his stress levels even further. So we did start, like, because sometimes I still would take him out in our neighborhood, and we always ran into triggers like other dogs, other people, vehicles, and it just became too much for me and also for him. So I decided that we will strictly like get in the car, drive to some place where I knew that the chance of running into his triggers was close to zero. So he did start, actually we both started to decompress, and he did slowly start like sniffing more, observing, exploring more, but the frenzied running like persisted. Um, and I don't have any video of that time, because things were so bad that I didn't think that it will ever get better. And I thought to myself, like, why would I want to have a video reminder of something that is going to happen to me, to us every day, for the period of Balt's life? And I was also, I think, a little ashamed and annoyed, like, why can't I have a normal dog? Why do I have to have a dog? And it's horrible to say that. Why do I have a dog who gets like so overexcited by the smallest things? So yeah, but I regret that now, like not having any video material, because it's so hard to believe now when you see videos of Balt walking that we ever struggled. It is hard to believe for me, and I was there. I went through that. But I do have a video of him for the first time, like exploring in an urban environment. Because we found a very calm street behind our house that is completely empty at certain times of the day, and that Balt really enjoys exploring. Um, so yeah, he did um, walk like this in nature before we tried this in an urban environment. But this was the first time that this happened in an urban environment. He could not like sniff for a fraction of a second before. And when you see him like calmly, like exploring, it is so hard to believe that this dog was not capable of like walking like this. And it's so nice to see for me that when you see him, like he wanted to walk past it, but then he was like, oh, what is this here? I'm gonna check it out. There was none of that before. And before Balt, I never asked myself like, how would dogs do walks if there was no human factor involved? I never thought about that. So I come from Slovenia. This is a very green, beautiful country in Europe. So we have a lot of beautiful forests, mountains, and we like to say that we are very outdoorsy and active people. Even not all of us are like that, because I'm not like that. But this notion of taking your dog on a walk and like just walking from one point to the other with very little stopping was something that I never questioned. It was something that I saw like every day, and that I did also with my two previous dogs. But then Balt came and BHARCS came, and this whole thing changed. And I think like if Sojanya, Surbi, or Anushri could share how, because they have a privilege of coexisting with free living dogs, if they can share how they do walks, I think would be really interesting at this time. So if any of you feels like sharing, would be great.
I'll just say very quickly, Anushri's coming in via audio, just for the audience. we haven't got a visual feed for Anushri, but yeah. So if you want to invite whoever, Eva.
Surbi can go because she was. Oh, and Sojanya wants to go. Okay, you can go.
Yeah, so Saujanya, you go ahead and I'll add to what you share.
Yeah, because I kind of have faced a very similar thing with Sammy, because we went through walks for a long time with him. Firstly, teaching him to heel walk, because that was what is considered, right? Like, that's a good way to walk for dogs. And he was such a tolerant dog. He would do whatever we asked him to do. We put him through all kinds of things and he took it. But there came a point where he stopped appreciating it, and he would pull on leash. We have fallen when we were walking him like face down. And it was very, as you rightly said, Eva, where we start questioning, what do dogs really want when you walk them? And, how are we supposed to walk them? We start questioning, why are we walking them X number of times? Why are we walking them for a certain duration? Why are we walking them a certain way? What are their needs when we walk them? I think we went through that phase with Sammy as well. And interestingly, because you brought out the whole street dog point of view, I think Sammy learned how to walk and interact with dogs very well, thanks to the street dogs we had when we started doing the whole process, because he was absolutely triggered by, companion dogs who were on leash. And when I say triggered, it was seen as a good thing, right? Like, hyper, wanting to meet another dog, and, like running towards another dog, wanting to meet. And he was a golden retriever. So that comes with, oh, dogs are so friendly, golden retrievers are so friendly. But it became very hard for us to manage. And then we decided that, we won't have an interaction with a pet dog for a long time. And we started walking at a different time of the day where, we would have very minimal pet dog interaction. But we couldn't avoid street dogs, because no matter where you go, you find street dogs. But they taught him so well, because he had a habit of, greeting with mounting. He would go to a dog and then he would attempt to mount them. And they very well taught him what's polite, not polite, but they never withdrew from interaction. They wanted to interact with him. They wanted to, be around him. But they were like, okay, this is not okay, but like, I still want to be around you and I want to still, be with you. I have videos of him like doing sniff walking with, some of the street dogs. And he's learned so well that, what is polite, what is impolite, how can he communicate. He would not communicate in the past, right? He wouldn't communicate with the dogs at all. So it was very interesting, because we had the blessing of street dogs to teach him how to communicate, how to slow down. We also had a decompression period from pet dogs, where he didn't, meet pet dogs. And then when he did, and then he gave me the confidence very slowly, saying that, he can handle that situation. And he handled it so beautifully after one point. So I think it's again a process of learning for us, unlearning for us, I guess. And then, our dogs getting the right space to learn, the right ways to interact, the polite ways to interact, what is new, ways to communicate. And I think that is something that we experienced with Sammy, and it's all thanks to the street dogs we had, who could teach him, this is polite, this is impolite. Because when we were meeting pet dogs, it was all hyper on both ends. And, as much as we could control Sammy's environment, Sammy's, lifestyle and everything, that was not the case with the other dogs. And I think the reason why I talk about environment and lifestyle is, I think what happens indoors and outside of the walks also affects the walks, right? We talk about cup filling, and if your dog's cup is full otherwise, the entire situation, even in walks, tends to, get affected. So I think that was my experience with Sammy and street dogs, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll just add to that. I think in whatever I've observed so far, I mean, I think one is I don't see street dogs necessarily be like, oh, it's 6 p.m. in the evening, it's time to go for a walk, right? Like, I don't think any of that happens. I think, Eva, every time you laugh, I want to laugh because, but
I
I
just
think the
imagined like street dog being like, oh, it's 6 o'clock. I have to go
yeah,
for a
I
walk.
mean, I think we have to acknowledge that for our pet dogs, a lot of these are human constructs, right? And they are dependent on humans leading what time of the day they're supposed to walk per se, right? I think with the street dogs that I have observed, I've found that it's very, it's very body based, and it's very much driven by what perhaps they're feeling internally in their body. And I think that comes to another piece of just the idea of interoception and how that period of decompression also helps dogs strengthen that sense of interoception for themselves. And so even when I observe streeties, I think one is just that whole manual construct of when is it time to walk, but also there, and again, we talk a lot about this in BHARCS, the idea of just functional movement, right? Moving in a way that our muscles, the anatomy is designed to move, versus just that kind of straight path, linear path walking, right? And again, if you with videos that you will see here of street dogs as well, they are maneuvering very different kinds of environments, right? So they are jumping, for example, on parapets, they are climbing sand piles, they are walking around in different spots. The natural terrain in which they exist is not as straight, and it's not that linear, right? So there is a lot of movement that's going on there as well, which I don't think for most part our pet dogs necessarily have access to, right? We're not actively hunting for spaces that allow for those differences in the environment. And then I think the third piece, which is again helpful for us to keep in mind, and this has also been quoted a couple of times in the group, which is Bhadra's studies, right, on the time activity budget, which also tells us that when she observed street dogs, she found that they spend close to 52% of their day in a state of inactivity, right? And so I think if you keep that in mind and compare to how much our pet dogs sort of spend time just moving around, and not just moving around, but also moving around in a way that's extremely adrenalized. I think it gives you a really good picture of what could be also contributing, right, to a lot of the so-called problem behaviors. And again, I think that I have found when I do consultations with pet dogs is that something that consistently seems to be filling their cup is this idea of over-exercise, right? Is them just doing more than what they actually need, and it's not sort of fitting together. So I think those were some of the things that I was thinking about with regards to street dogs, for sure.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Yeah, and that was like learning all of this stuff, seeing the videos of street dogs, like how they move, how like relaxed they are, really made sense to me, because like we are two different species, and of course we are gonna do stuff differently, right? So this kind of became a framework for how like what kind of opportunities, experiences I wanted to offer Balt with his walks, and he has really taught me like how important it is to meet the dog where they are at, because, and also like listen to them and move forward when they are ready, right? Because I truly believe that if we wouldn't go at Balt's pace, we would not be where we are today. And I think we would still be facing the same issues we did like 4 years ago. And so what we did to change things around, I did not use any treats or training with Balt. As Surbhi already mentioned, that when Matan was in that hyper-focused state, the treats did not exist for her. And it was the same for Balt, because if he would be in a space like to acknowledge the treats, I think we would not be needing the treats at all. And also like his relationship with food was pretty bad. So the presence of treats, food only made him even more overexcited. Like it added to his stress levels. So he would run more. He would be like doing it for longer periods of time. But what I did try, because the frenzied running was just too much, I did try like physically stopping him, and this made everything worse. He like, it did not calm him down. It achieved quite the opposite. And then I started learning with BHARCS that every behavior is there for a reason. So this got me thinking, okay, this running thing, it looks completely crazy and out of control for me, but I guess for Balt is serving some kind of purpose. So I decided to try what happens if I just let him run for however long time he wanted to. And he actually learned that if he started running in circles around me, that there is like the leash will not suddenly stop him when it came to the end of the leash. So the leash sort of had no end. So now his frenzied running was not so frenzied anymore, and it stopped being painful for both of us. And now that he could do it anytime he needed and do it for the period of time that he needed, these periods got fewer and fewer and shorter. And also, like, the reason why I decided to not use treats with him was because of this knowledge that I got, that like every behavior is present for a reason. And if you want to address like the behavior, you first have to address that reason, right? Because, and like, we here are trying to understand a different species, and I think we all know how hard it is to understand other people sometimes. So the dog's behavior is the most valuable piece of information that we can get. And once we start like involving food, treats, training, trying to influence the dog's behavior, I think we lose that important piece of information, and we make everything that much harder for ourselves and our dogs. Because I did need Balt's help to guide me in how best to help him. And that's why I did not want to influence how he should do something or deal with something, because I wanted him to come to a place where he would be in a state of mind where he could make the decision for the change to come from him, because I believe that that was the only way that we could achieve a long-lasting change, without unknowingly putting his well-being in danger. And this also like made the shift in my thinking, because at the start I was so focused on like fixing this behavior, right? Stopping the frenzied running. But with the BHARCS, I really started to put more emphasis on getting to know Balt, trying to understand him. And I really like started to enjoy the journey, and I started to believe that we will get there when we get there, because at the beginning, I did not think we will ever get there. So what I did do is I worked on lowering his stress levels in general, meeting his needs, and working towards a species appropriate lifestyle, which also includes how we do walks, right? So we didn't solely focus on walks. Like, I did not look at walks in an isolation, but I rather focused on the bigger picture. Yes, I did make sure that I provided him with the best possible circumstances for a good walk, like calm places where he could explore, sniff, observe, where he could do like his own thing. I also like use harness that is not like restricting his movements in any way, long leash. But I think like still the most important part was meeting Balt where he was at. And the very like most difficult part was letting him do what he needed in that moment to process what happened to him in his past, what was happening to him now, because everything was completely new for him here. So that he could process it in a way that he needed to process it. So frustration, fear, him discovering who he is has been a part of our life for quite some time. And it was so difficult. It was really difficult because I did feel that I was failing him because he was struggling. But now, when I look back at that time, I now see this more as part of a process, a part in his journey that he had to go through on his own terms to deal with all of the things that he had to deal with. But that doesn't mean that I was just like observing him like struggling and said, you do you, right? I'm not here for you. But I was there for him, providing like the best like possible environment, circumstances, care that I knew how. But I did not try to influence his behavior in any way, because the moments that I did, it made everything worse. And I think this happened to all of us as outside observers. When we see someone having a hard time, struggling, we see like what they have to do to get better. And we might be right, like, if you do this, you will feel better. But I think the more important question here is, like, we do not know how that individual feels. We do not know if they are ready to take the next step. We do not know if this thing that we think is best for them is necessarily the best thing to do for that individual in that moment in time. And also, if is the individual even ready to take the next step? And I remember Sindor once said to me that we cannot take anyone's pain away. The most and best thing we can do is be there for them. And I could not agree with that more. So we might think that like we should be doing something to help our dogs, other people, because being there feels like it's too small of a thing. But in fact, like providing safety, love and care for that individual, I think if you think about it, it is the biggest thing that we can offer them. But yeah, it is hard because we have to take a step back and let that individual go through that on their own terms. And before we go further, I would like to invite all to share if they have any thoughts, if there's something they would like to share at this point.
If no one's going, I can go. Anushri here. Eva, gosh, I know you said that you didn't have any videos and that it might be hard for us to visualize, but I think you did a fantastic job of laying that story of how I could actually imagine that state when you were talking through it. So to see him, like you said, right, when you even like paused for a second, said, "Hey, wait, what's that?" Like I can imagine how remarkable that feeling must have, like what it must have felt like, because of what it means when you, because it's not just the act of doing that, it's the significance of what it means that he's able to do that now, right? I think that's fantastic. I love how you, without any videos, laid out that picture so clearly, and then and then of course the piece of just showing up, right? Just being there for someone and then saying, "Hey, yeah, okay, I get it. I may not understand this behavior, but maybe that's what you need to do right now. That's what's going to help you. And, I'm going to make sure you're safe and you're feeling like you can express," right? I think that is so beautiful. And I think that's not always, I mean, like you said, it's a really hard thing to do. That's a tough one to do. But yeah, that's the first time I think, experienced Balt's story in its entirety. And it's very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, when he started to sniff and explore, even if it was just for a second, because that was not there at the beginning, I was like, okay, we are gonna be okay. We are gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay. Yeah, so I never was as happy to see a dog sniff and explore as I was with Balt. Yeah.
I can go next. I'm looking at Andrew and Sajana figuring who's gonna come in. I think there were lots of things that are really, really powerful. I think one, I was thinking about how, we were talking about redefining walks, but I love how we are spending time just really understanding who Balt is, what your relationship with him is, what he's coming with, how he's evolving, how he's coping with this new relationship, this new environment around him. And I think that's so important, because I think something that you said, Eva, was, I think often like we look at walks in isolation and we don't see, and again, this is what Sajane also said, we don't see what the dog is necessarily experiencing overall in their life, in their environment. But we also take away, I think, who the dog is, what the dog is coping with, and we just sort of put it into this cookie cutter thing, right? That a dog on a walk should look like this. But each dog looks so different because each dog is different, right? And so I think that I love that the focus in the conversation again is not just about, oh, this is what we were able to accomplish on the walks. It's about, this is who Balt is and was, and that's the journey that we're trying to capture, which I think is really powerful. I think the other thing I was thinking about was just how you talked about decompression. And again, I think what was really interesting about that was just that I think often we think that decompression means moving from difficult to easy. But sometimes decompression also means moving deeper into difficulty before coming to the easy part, right? It's almost like we're unpacking layers and layers. And so I think that just, I think just, again, I think resetting or realigning expectations for ourselves as well as dog, guardians, as parents, to say what decompression for the dog in front of me will look like will be very different from another dog, right? Because we don't know this dog. And so as this dog learns to relax and find safety, it's very much possible that some other difficult layers will come up before we get to that place where they feel more emotionally safe and secure. And so I thought that was another really interesting piece that you shared. And then the last piece that I absolutely resonate with is what you talked about, just like giving Bart the freedom to just like run around, because Lucci was like that as well. Like any open field, and if she's off leash, she is going to free run, right? And I think that sometimes, and it's something that I have to keep like reminding myself to do. Like I find this, and I don't know whether you'll resonate with this, which is I want to try and find an answer or an explanation for every behavior that I see with my dogs.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes there isn't, right? It doesn't make me any less incompetent, or it doesn't make me any less of a caregiver, but sometimes there isn't. And the only thing that I can do in that moment is actually just lean into what my dog is telling me that my dog needs. And very similar to you, like I realized that when I was giving Lucci the opportunity to just free run for whatever it is that she needed, the amount of time that she spent free running slowly and steadily decreased. But not just slowly and steadily decreasing. What I found was every time she ran, she also found a way to cope immediately with that, right? So after like a quick bout of run, I would see her very actively sniff. I would see her very actively find parts of an environment where she could move more thoughtfully and slowly. And again, I think that exactly to your story, that happens when you holistically look at the dog and look at what is it that the dog needs overall. And then the walks just become one representation of how your dog is actually evolving. So I thought those were some really, really, really cool points that you brought up.
Yeah, it was like, if I would not be joining BHARCS and starting to observe Balt, like I would thought that he was getting worse and that I have to stop him from running. But I saw like he was getting worse if I tried to influence his behavior in any way. Like he could not calm down at all. And also when we came home, like he was, there was, I think, like 6 months of him nipping me, and it was very painful. And if the walk was stressful, he was more stressed at home. So I thought to myself, hey guy, you know what you are doing. I will be here for you. You do you. And he, like, as you mentioned, like the running, like it got shorter and shorter. And after the run, he was like, okay, now I'm ready to sniff, to explore, to be calmer. Yeah, so yeah, it was very similar with Balt. Yeah.
I'll just say the last couple of things, because I think a lot of things have been spoken by Anushree and Surabhi. But one thing that kind of comes back again and again is, I think, how the general lifestyle affects walk, but also how you just now mentioned that the way walk goes affects how they feel post walk and how they are at home. So I think there's no way we can ever look at walks in isolation. I think, when I'm sure all of us can resonate here, that if someone comes as a client saying that my dog is behaving in a certain way during walks, we never like just look at walks. And I remember talking to Sindhu very early on saying, why don't we do like a small service of like just walks? And then she told that, how can you just do about walks? Because there's so much else that's going on in the background. I remember the dog that I walked for our assignment, Akira, she had pain and instability, and she couldn't slow down no matter what we did. And how can we help just in isolation for the walks if we can't look at the dog holistically? So I think that's something that I think we have been talking about. But what I loved that you brought up is letting your dog guide the journey, and trusting your dog, because I think oftentimes while we're trying to build trust, for the dog in us, I think we don't easily trust our dog to know, what they need, what they want. I think we're trying to create safe spaces, but not trust our dogs enough to know that, they know what they're doing, they know where they're coming from. And I think we seem to believe very strongly that we know what our dogs want, how they need to behave, how they should respond or communicate in a certain situation, and try and then cue in those behaviors because we believe that we know what our dogs need and want. And I think in doing so, we end up suppressing the natural behaviors. I've been thinking about like behavior suppression and behavior masking lately. So I feel like we start suppressing their natural behaviors. And I think while it's unintentional, it just becomes something that further stresses our dogs out because we're not really listening into what they need. So I think in BHARCS, we so strongly believe in the fact that our dogs are the experts and we are just here to guide them, facilitate the journey for them, be there for them. And I think a lot of people, like I've had people say, how can you like trust the dog? The dog is going to be unsafe, because that's the automatic assumption that if you let your dog be and do what they want to do, they're just going to indulge in unsafe behaviors. But when we see stories like Balt, we realize that it's not so. They know, and I think they're going to be opting for more unsafe way, more safe ways than unsafe ways, right? I think it's unfair to believe that our dogs are just going to remain unsafe and indulge in unsafe behavior. So I think that's something that kind of again comes through, and I really want to appreciate you for saying that your dog went from shutdown to showing behaviors that were like unwanted, undesirable, usually labeled unwanted, undesirable, because a lot of times shutdown dogs is what people look, the way the dog looks, it's assumed to be calm, it's assumed to be good dog, it's assumed to be the right kind of a dog. And I remember thinking about this when Anushi was sharing Snow story as well, because I remember she spoke about how he used to be during separation anxiety and he would not indulge in undesirable behaviors, right? But you knew that there was something wrong, the way he was feeling. And I think the same with what you shared about Bart and how you actually appreciated his transition from, the calm looking to actually a dog who was expressing whatever he was going through, because I think that's you provided a very safe space. And I think we all talk about safety and feeling safe. And I think you gave him a space where he could feel safe to express those emotions. And I think that would have gone a long way, I'm sure, in building the relationship that you did with Balt.
Yeah, because I knew that like there were never any consequences to that like unwanted behaviors, because like I knew the moment like he would be punished, rejected for those behaviors, he would shut right back up. And I don't know if he would come back again, because now I would be that unsafe person for him, right? So yeah, it was a very difficult period, but we had to go through it. I did not see any way of how we could come through it. And Balt being who he is now, like this, he is like so much more like happier dog, confident. Like now you see him that he's calm. Before there was nothing there, like as if he was not even there, like nothing. You could not connect with that dog because there was just this void. So yeah. Andy, did you want to share something before we move forward?
Yeah, well, I'll try and keep it brief because there's a lot of stuff actually. I really hope I think this is going to resonate with so many caregivers, I think, especially because even starting off sharing about your own physical challenges, because I think that's important, because you can see when people have a dog who struggles in the environment, and that might involve them being very kind of pulling and being fizzy and being unresponsive and all that kind of thing. And then if you have your own challenges as well, how easy it is to fall into thinking, I need this tool, or getting told you have to have this tool, you have to do that kind of thing. Is rather than thinking about the kind of shift about, it was his internal environment that was making it harder for him to kind of connect to the external environment. And then the traditional ways of looking at things is to keep trying to push everything into that same environment. And that's where more control comes in inverted commas. So I think that was really important, sharing that, I think. And the slide that said the perception change of what walk should be, that is the big shift. That is the big shift. It's how we adapt those things. And brilliant line, dog behavior is the most important piece of information we can get. And I love that. And I think another t-shirt there. So Jenny, let's get that on. I just think this is so important though, because when we think about a truly trauma-informed approach, there are two really important things. One of them actually doesn't get talked about enough, and that's the first one I'll share, which is the onus of not adding more trauma. How can you do that if you're not available to the communication that comes to you? You can't know. And what you describe also, we see it a lot, we see it with humans a lot, when you're in that more shut down state, which isn't truly shut down, actually, there's a lot of stuff still going on, but it seems that way. Especially with the dogs who come into our lives, when they first start barking, when they first start playing up, in inverted commas, that's the first sign that the brain's thinking, I feel safer to communicate now. So this is such important. So this is a really important case study, I think, you're sharing with Balt, especially for caregivers to recognize that. And the last thing you mentioned about a recognition that, yeah, this is tough, but we've kind of got to get through this bit without Balt feeling that he can't communicate and that his behaviors aren't valid. And then you were thinking, how do I create that safe space for those, like you were saying, so because it isn't about just letting them do whatever. It's a case of, right, okay, I need you to go through this. How do I create safety for you whilst you are able to do that? So those are my points, really. I just think it's a great example of so many really core parts about the lived experience of dogs and how we best turn up for those, I think, and support. And the fact, even at the beginning, hearing about the hunting dogs in Spain and how they are just seen as being lesser than anything. I think it's a powerful story. So thank you, Eva. That's my bit.
Yeah, thank you, Andy. And I think like this second part builds up on what you were saying. So just okay, no. Okay, we have seen this. Okay, so boundaries, right? Because like boundaries are needed. So we often say in relations with walks that the dog should lead the walk. And that was a concept that was very close to me from the start. But where I did pause was like, how the heck am I supposed to set a boundary if the dog has to lead? But the pause came from the way I understood boundaries and setting boundaries with our dogs at that time. And that was that we tell the dog what they can do, and they have to do it right away without exceptions. But through BHARCS, I started thinking, like, how would it make me feel if someone was setting boundaries with me in that way? And the answer was not very good. So I knew that that was not the way I wanted to set boundaries with Balt in general, and also on walks. So this got me thinking, like, what kind of boundaries are even necessary regarding the walks? And I knew that I have to set boundaries in order to keep Balt safe, to keep others safe, and also to respect the boundaries of others, right? And we Like, I think we all know how difficult it is to set a boundary, because we might set it, but it doesn't mean that others will respect it. And I'm not talking just about dogs here. And I remember Sindor talking in the Canine Essentials 101 about this, like how when you care about someone, you also care about what they care about, and you are much more likely to listen to them and make compromises and do what is important for that individual. And that is exactly how I started. Like, this was the framework for setting boundaries with Balt. So we mainly worked on our relationship, and there was never like a consequence for him doing or like listening or not listening to what I was asking him. But if it was a hard boundary, so for example, if his safety of others, boundary of others were in danger, I would wait for Balt to accept the boundary that was set. And I will show you in the next slide how we set boundaries on walks, and in situations where his safety was not endangered, other safety was not endangered, we like made compromises based on the situation, or we do as Balt wants to do, because it is his walk at the end of the day. And here we have a video. So Balt is a hunting dog that was trained to hunt. So when he came to me at the sight or smell of any forest animal, he would go completely crazy, like lunging, squealing, barking. So setting boundaries at that time looked quite different than you will see on this video. So keep in mind that this video was taken a year ago, when Balt's mental state was much better. He was in much better place. We both were. So yeah, when we are setting boundaries, I think it's very, very important that we are patient, and we take the state of the dog into consideration. So at the beginning, I really tried to put us in situations where I knew that setting boundaries was not something we did very often. We still walk in places where I know that there will not be a need to set too many boundaries for Balt, but especially at that time. And I tried to make sure that the situation would not be like too difficult for him. So here on this video, he smelled some forest animal and he wanted to go after the animal. And because like this is not something I would wish, I set a boundary, and I set it with like my body language, exclusively with my body language. So I'm not pulling Balt, I'm not using any treats. I'm simply communicating with my body being turned in the other direction that I'm sorry, but we are not going there, and patiently waiting for Balt to follow me. So the whole situation looks pretty calm, right? But this is not how it looked like 4 years ago. And he wants to move forward, and I'm just like holding the leash. I'm not pulling it. And then I take a few steps in the other direction, and Balt follows. And I made sure that I did not pull him. But that was all, that is all that is needed on our walks now. If there is a need for me to set a boundary. And every time he chooses to listen to what I'm trying to communicate to him, I thank him. not because I think that he necessarily understands the words, but because like we know that dogs are very perceptive to our emotions, to the emotions in our voice. So when I thank him, like I want him to know that I know that this is not easy for him, and that I'm very grateful for him that he decided to like abandon the chase of wild animals and instead come with me in the other direction. And it's also a reminder for me that this is a relationship of two individuals, and that Balt has his own agency, his own wants, his own needs. And as I've mentioned, like dogs are very perceptive to our emotions and also to our body language. And this is like our body language is, I think, such an important tool that we can use when we are out on walks. And you will see in this, like this is a video of the same walk, but to different parts of the walk. You will see Balt wanting to go in one direction that I did not want to go into that direction. And you will see, like, observe my body language. I will turn my shoulders away from that direction, and you will see what happens. In this first part of the video, my partner decided that Balt will not be on camera as much. So Balt here is like sniffing. And now my boyfriend decided to give Balt privacy to do his own thing. But you will see after Balt finishes that I turn my shoulders away from that direction because I wanted to communicate to Balt, I do not want to go in that direction. And I don't know what the reason was. And you can see like Balt came back. And to see that this is not a coincidence, we have two more instances of this. So you see that I'm not leading Balt away from this place because I have no issues with you exploring here. I just don't want to go up that path. And you will see, because Balt started to move in the direction of that path, that I turn my shoulders away from that direction. And Balt turned, that was not seen on the video, and came back. And now the second part. Balt went uphill. It's not seen from the video, but the hill got pretty steep. And because I had some pain in the hips, I did not want to go up the hill. And you can see me the whole time turning the shoulders away from that direction. But because we have a long leash, Balt can easily go and explore what he wants to explore. And you see me going further, like following him. And I will comment on that a bit later. But as I stop, I again turn my shoulders and communicate to Balt, you do your own thing, but I really don't want to go up here. And he turns and comes back. And I think this part where I followed him is very important to recognize, because I think a lot of times it is communicated that when you want your dog to do something, like they have to do it right away, and you cannot move in that direction with them because they will never then do what you want them to do. But because this is a communication, like it's not like me turning my shoulders away is not a command for Balt, because this is a communication, we can adapt to every situation. And I think the more we listen to our dogs, and respect their wishes, the more they are ready to do the same for us. And yeah, this was actually the last video and the end of my presentation. So if anyone wants to chime in, and we can close with the discussion.
Okay, I saw everyone's faces and I thought for sure everyone's just waiting to go because the number of things you said, like my mind is blown at like multiple different points at what you were saying in this. I think amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had one thought with Balt, and I think the piece of how underrated it is to just relook at it as communication, right? Like when I was doing the back bed, one of the walking assignments, I remember walking with what I termed it at the time as a rather difficult assignment because the dog, I could not set any boundaries at all in that walk. I was walking someone else's dog and I just couldn't. And I had to, you take a video of it, and Sindhu and I were talking about it, and she said, honestly, the number of times you said no to that dog on that walk, actually, even I wouldn't want to walk with you. Because, like at every turn you're saying no, no, no. Like, how is that pleasant for the dog? Like where is this, and that really obviously, how these puzzles start building, but that really put a piece in place for me. But and that's so important when you were saying, it's so important. Yeah, you can set a boundary, but also how much, where, and only when you need it, right? And dogs seem to, especially when you build that relationship, they seem to understand that. And like you very rightly pointed out, they're like, yeah, okay, I know that you're setting a boundary. I know you're asking something off of me because you need to, and therefore I'm happy to oblige, right? Like we see that now. So I mean, but some of the things that I'm not going to take up too much time, but they were brilliant. Thank you. That second half was just fantastic.
Thank you.
Such a okay. First things first, as soon as your video came out, I was just so happy because I felt like it was a flashback of trying to get my partner to take videos of my leash walking and just the drama around that. But I think there are a couple of things. I know two things. I think one is we talk so much about, and again, I think when we start talking about the importance of environment, and for a lot of us, we talk about, can we find calmer environments, quieter environments for our dogs to walk in? I think that a lot of people, some of the criticism, let's say, to that, or some of the pushback to that also comes back to say, oh, but if you walk your dog in a calm, quiet environment, then of course your dog's not going to show any problem behaviors on a walk, right? But I think what is so interesting about this experience is that you are walking with Balt in this gorgeous forest, but the forest also has triggering elements for him, right? And so I think just this understanding that every environment is different for different dogs, and what looks, good for one dog may actually be very, very triggering for another dog as well, right? And so I think just acknowledging that at the end of the day, again, going back to that messaging of read your dog, see what is the information that your dog is giving you, acknowledge that behavior, hold space for that behavior, and then sort of work with that. I thought that was something that really stood out for me. I think the second one is, and I remember like Sindhu saying something very similar to what she told Anushri during one of my assignments. And she said she saw a video, and I remember like I was walking with Luchi in a particular environment, and she said, I'm looking in this video and you look absolutely disinterested in what your dog is doing, right? You're more concerned about everything else that is happening. You're not concerned about what she is doing. And it's showing up in the way you're holding, the kind of distance that you've maintained with her. It's showing up in the way that you're holding the leash. And the reason why it comes to me is because of what you said right now, which is when Balt turns, you also turn, right? Because to me, that is such a beautiful moment of connection to say, hey, I don't want to go there, but I'm still interested in what you're exploring.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold
Exactly.
space for this exploration. So let's figure it out together. But here's also a boundary. And
Yeah.
I think that to me, with the BHARCS way, the biggest lesson with walks has been that these can be really beautiful connection rituals.
Yeah.
Right? Like to me, like I think I reached a point with Luchi and Mutton where towards the end of their lives with me, I was just like, okay, you know what? I just want to go out for a walk with you because I'm feeling disconnected. And I want to find a way to center myself. I want to be present for y'all. And I want to this needs to be like a thing that the three of us do. And I think that if we can shift that perspective as well to say, oh, I have to take my dog out for a walk, versus how can I use this as an opportunity to learn more about my dog? How can I use this as an opportunity to foster presence for my dog and to just connect? I feel like it can really shift things so much more, because again, some of the things that you picked up in terms of Bal's problem behaviors on a walk happened because of your presence during that time for him as well. And so, yeah, I think that was my takeaway, but excellent stuff. So
Yeah,
good. I was so
thank
happy
you.
to see the shoulder turns and the boundary setting.
Yeah.
It was lovely. It was lovely.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you mentioned, the environment, the places of walks, like at the beginning, there was one place where he was a bit more calmer than in other places. So like we only walked in that place for a very long time, and we started like expanding the locations like slowly when I saw like, okay, now I think is the time that we might go in a different location, and why that location was more okay to him than any other, I don't know. Like to me, it looks like a forest, like any other forest. But for him, something was different. I don't know what, but yeah.
Thank you firstly for redefining boundaries for all of us, right? Because I think we are so we have misunderstood and misinterpreted what boundaries feel like and should look like. And just like how Surabhi and Anushya have had this experience, I have had the same experience where I realized that I was setting boundaries on walks unnecessarily, right? Like it was so not necessary in certain situations. It was just as if instinctively, like I'm saying no for something that just did not need a no. And I keep saying this, that if you want your dog to respect your no, I think you should say yes to them first. And I think we keep saying no so much that I don't see why a dog would, respect, our no when we're doing it unnecessarily. So I think thank you for, bringing up the definition of boundaries, what we feel, or we need to relook at boundaries again. And I think boundaries also work when we offer a lot of choices, right? So when we say no to our dogs, we also are saying that is a no, but all this is a yes. So you please go ahead and then do this. But that I feel is a no, right? For whatever reason that, safety concerns, or it's just not possible. We don't know what's there ahead. So I think while we're also setting boundaries, offering choices, building relationship is so important. And we see that so clearly in your videos, where you and Bart are so connected throughout the walk, right? No matter what the distance that you both are at, I think you're so well connected that a small hand signal, I think it was so easy to miss that hand signal if you hadn't pointed it out. Such a small communication, and he also looks at you, and you have built such a good relationship, and you remain connected throughout the walk, which is so hard for us to achieve if we don't have the right base and foundation for the trust that we build with our dogs, and trusting them as well. And I think communication can look so subtle, and I think that came out so well as well. It's almost as if we don't do much, and that's what it looks like, right? Like all of us, we do things that are communication which looks like there's nothing happening. Like if you hadn't pointed out turning your shoulder, it's almost like you're not doing anything, right? But we are doing so much with communication, and you're constantly reading Balt, you're getting his feedback on whether your boundary is okay for him or not, and then being like, okay, fine, if this is not okay, can we do something else, right? While still establishing those boundaries, which is so great. I think these things are so important to be highlighted, because I feel like, we don't see conversations around communication in this manner. We don't see conversations around relationship, especially on outdoors and walks. There's only either like treats and reinforcement, or like constantly cueing, or it could be ourselves or whatever, but it can be so much more enriching if you can have that communication and relationship and connection with your dog while you're outdoors. And I love what Surbhi said, that use walks as a way to connect. It's another opportunity, just another opportunity for you to connect. So yeah, amazing stuff, amazing stuff. Thank you for sharing, Eva.
Thank you for what you shared. Andy, do you have something to share?
Well, just thank you. I think I think this presentation is going to resonate, I think, for a lot of people. And it's interesting what you said there, Saujanya, about a lot of these things that we've seen over all the presentations. It can look like you're not doing much, but what you're being is present. And that is a huge thing. It takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of navigating our own biases and all the kind of things we've talked about in our own kind of perceptions to be truly present, and to respond to what it is you're experiencing with the dog. So there's a huge amount of effort, actually. It's not like we're doing anything. So I just wanted to kind of mention that. And also I think when we think about the principle of sensory mapping, and how finding those quiet places allows that sensory system to map things better, and how that is really valuable to when you want to look at having things a little bit busier. Any of my clients listening in knows that there's a kind of a country park nearby that it's got the busy bits and the less busy bits, and as we work through to support a dog who struggles in the environment, even just walking through the quieter bits, getting that dog into that state, and then having a little peek into the busier bits, that the dog just seems to be more responsive. And a lot of the things you've shown beautifully in that video, Eva, I think is a big take home for people about how the leash now becomes a physical representation of the symbiotic nature of that adventure into the environment. It's a beautiful thing. Really great. Really great. Good. Okay. Well, is there anything you want to kind of say as we kind of close off, Eva? Anybody else want to say anything before we close off another amazingly powerful presentation?
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you all for your comments. Thank you to people watching now and later. This is a bit emotional because Balt has been called many negative things by many people, and it feels, I don't even have a word, like it feels so great seeing you like enjoying his story, not judging him, and it's just like I'm very grateful to you that I could share his story, and hopefully like light that little spark in someone else. So yeah, thank you.
But I think this is a theme for all these conversations from all your wonderful presentations, is an invitation for other caregivers to celebrate their stories, including the hard bits, right? Because all your presentations have been very real. I feel a bit emotional thinking, just myself even, and they're not even my dogs, but make you think about your own journeys and share this more, because it's important. But there is a celebration to have here, and these stories, they're these wonderful animal survival stories that we have a chance to bear witness to. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, well, we're having a little break because I'm going on holiday. But the good thing is when we do come back from a little break, we've got another full weekend. So on the 6th and 7th of July. So Sarabi on the 6th, co-regulation for dogs and humans. This is going to be fascinating because I think we've seen examples of this in some of the presentations. So these are threads that we can build on and build on more. And so Janya on the 7th. So on the 6th and the 7th, so the Saturday and the Sunday, intersectionality of animal welfare, gender and other social systems. This is going to be, well, that's going to be a meaty one, isn't it? We're going to be diving into that one. So, wow, this is great. And I think actually looking at how this series is building up, these topics are really going to build on the foundations of these presentations, actually, which is going to be really important for us. So 6th of July, 7th of July, we'll be back. Thank you, everybody, especially seeing some of you who are really finding the time to put this into your diaries and be here live with us. That's really great. We really appreciate that. And of course, I know everybody can't do the live, so they catch up with things, and the ones who are just making sure this is kind of like an important part of their week now, tuning into the BHARCS conversation. Thank you so much, Eva. Amazing conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarab. Thank you, Nashri, for all coming in, and thank you everybody who's tuned in, and see you soon.